Every year, gardeners spend $200 billion on fertilizers, believing silence is harmless. But in the 1950s, a scientist made plants grow 72% faster and 20% taller, using nothing but sound. The catch? His hack cost $0 and threatened an entire industry. Why did we abandon what once tripled harvests when the proof was right under our noses? The real story starts with a mistake nearly everyone still makes. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. For generations, the advice has stayed the same: water, sunlight, soil, fertilizer. Every manual, every expert, every neighbor repeats it. But in all these routines, one thing is almost never mentioned: sound. The world outside the garden is full of it: birds at dawn, insects at dusk, the hum of life carrying on. Yet inside the greenhouse, inside the kitchen window planter, the air stays still. Not just quiet, empty. This is not a gardener's fault. The textbooks never warned about silence. Agricultural science, as it has been taught for decades, treats plants like simple machines. Add the right ingredients, get the right output. If something fails, the answer is always more. More nitrogen, more phosphorus, more dollars. What is missing cannot be seen or touched. It cannot be measured with a scoop or a test kit. It is a gap so ordinary, most people never notice it. But plants did not evolve in a vacuum. They grew up surrounded by the rhythms of the world: the trill of a wren, the chorus of crickets, the low thunder before rain. Every blade of grass, every leaf, every root has spent millions of years listening. When these sounds are stripped away, something subtle is lost. A silent garden is not just peaceful, it is deprived. That is the real oversight. Not a missing nutrient, not a secret ingredient, but the simple act of ignoring the language plants have always understood. The silence is not natural, it is a human invention, and it is holding back a world of growth that has been waiting just out of earshot. In the 1960s, a botanist in India set out to test a theory most people would have dismissed as fantasy. Dr. T.C. Singh, head of botany at Annamalai University, filled greenhouses with the sound of classical violin. The results were impossible to ignore. Plants grew 20% taller than their silent neighbors. Their biomass, the total weight of stems, leaves, and roots, rose by 72%. In rice paddies, fields washed with Indian classical music produced 60% more grain. These were not isolated flukes or garden rumors. Singh published his findings, showing the numbers to anyone willing to look. Growth, it turned out, was not just a question of water and sunlight. Plants responded to sound, just as they had evolved to do for millions of years. This was not some expensive laboratory secret. Singh's experiments did not require high-tech gear or rare chemicals. The only special ingredient was frequency, a sound played at the right pitch for the right amount of time. Today, anyone with a smartphone or a speaker already owns the tool. No fertilizer bill, no patent, no paywall. The same simple hack that drove Singh's plants to outgrow their rivals is waiting, free, on any device. All it takes is pressing play. Singh's numbers are still staggering decades later, but for one man, they were not enough. He wanted more than proof. He wanted a solution that could feed the world. His search would take 15 years, and it began with a sound he could not forget. Dan Carlson's life changed on a dirt road in Korea. He was a young soldier, thousands of miles from home, when hunger stopped being an abstract problem. The story that followed him back to Minnesota began with a mother and her child. Food aid in that village was rationed only to the most desperate, children with visible injuries, the ones who could not walk. Carlson watched as a mother made a choice no one should ever have to make. She placed her toddler's legs beneath the wheels of an army truck. The sound of breaking bones cut through the dust and heat. The memory never left him. He was haunted. It was not just the pain or the shock or the way the crowd fell silent. It was the knowledge that in that moment, survival meant sacrifice, that hunger could force a parent to do the unthinkable. Back in the United States, Carlson could not shake what he had witnessed. He studied horticulture, searching for an answer that did not involve chemicals or expensive interventions. He made himself a promise: find a way to grow more food, enough that no parent would ever have to choose between feeding a child and saving them from harm. The vow became an obsession. He spent years in libraries poring over plant physiology, watching the world's poorest farmers stretch every seed and drop of water. He was not chasing profit or recognition. He was chasing a kind of redemption, a way to undo a moment he could never forget. Every experiment, every sleepless night was a step toward keeping that promise. The hunger he saw in Korea became the engine of everything that followed. A single houseplant, bought for less than $1, became the proof nobody could ignore. Dan Carlson's purple passion vine was not just healthy, it was impossible. Over 25 years, the vine stretched across rooms, up walls, through windows, and back again until it measured more than 1,300 feet. That is not a typo. The species is supposed to max out at 18 inches. Carlson's vine grew long enough to circle a football field 4 times. In 1979, the Guinness Book of World Records recorded it on page 113 as the world's longest houseplant, grown in a Minnesota living room. The plant did not just survive, it adapted. Leaves split and changed shape. It rebounded from every pruning, every setback, as if the rules of biology had bent in its favor. Carlson's method was not a secret fertilizer or a miracle chemical, it was sound. Specific frequencies played like birds at sunrise. The results did not stop with a single vine. When he applied the same frequencies to strawberries, yields tripled. 3 times as many berries, grown with less fertilizer, less water, and no genetic modification. Farmers who tried it saw fields transform in a single season. For most, seeing a 1,300-foot vine or a field bursting with strawberries was enough. The numbers were real, the records public. Carlson's obsession had crossed from wild idea to documented fact. Before any university lab or peer-reviewed journal caught up, the evidence was already rooting itself in plain sight. Inside a soundproof laboratory at Tel Aviv University, researchers set up an experiment that would challenge everything gardeners thought they knew about plants. Tomato and tobacco plants were placed in small, isolated boxes. Ultrasonic microphones were positioned just centimeters away. The scientists waited. Then they deprived some plants of water, and for others they snipped or cut leaves. The microphones recorded what the naked ear never could: bursts of ultrasonic clicks in the 40 to 80 kilohertz range. Some plants under stress emitted more than 30 clicks per hour. Healthy plants stayed almost silent. The sound was not random noise. Sophisticated algorithms analyzed the patterns and revealed that each type of stress produced a different signature. Dehydration clicks had a different rhythm than those triggered by cutting. Even in a noisy greenhouse, the system could tell which plant was thirsty, which was injured, and which was at ease. The plants were broadcasting their condition, a kind of Morse code, into the air. Elsewhere, another team examined how plants might receive information from the world around them. Evening primrose flowers were exposed to the low hum of bees in flight. Within 3 minutes, the sugar content of their nectar jumped by 20%. When the petals were removed, the effect disappeared. High-speed cameras and laser vibrometers revealed that the petals themselves vibrated in response to sound, acting like miniature eardrums. Without petals, the plant was deaf to the bees and failed to sweeten its nectar. No one had suspected that plants could both send and receive acoustic signals. But the data was clear. Plants do not live in silence. Their tissues vibrate, their cells pulse, and their signals travel at frequencies far above the range of human hearing. A new kind of communication was unfolding, one that had always been present, just beyond the reach of ordinary senses. In a farming district outside Beijing, rows of cucumber plants stretched beneath a canopy of speakers. The experiment was simple: 2 identical fields, one bathed in the usual silence, the other exposed to a carefully tuned sound regimen. Scientists set the frequency at 3,000 to 5,000 hertz, matching the pitch of birds at sunrise, and ran the experiment for just a few hours each morning. The rest of the day, the fields were identical: same seeds, same water, same soil, same sun. The results were impossible to ignore. The cucumbers in the sonic block produced 37% more fruit than their silent neighbors. Not just bigger cucumbers, but more of them, week after week, across the entire harvest. The difference was not just in the numbers. Field workers noticed the plants themselves looked healthier, leaves broader, stems thicker, roots running deeper into the earth. This was not a one-off or a greenhouse fluke. The trial was repeated across several growing seasons, with different teams rotating in and out to check for bias. Every time, the yield boost held steady. The only variable was sound. No extra fertilizer, no genetic modification, no new chemicals. Just the right frequency, played at the right time, through a basic speaker system. For the agronomists overseeing the project, the implications were immediate. A 37% yield increase meant more food from the same land, with no added cost beyond a set of speakers and a timer. In a country where arable land is scarce and fertilizer prices climb every year, the promise of a zero-input yield boost was hard to ignore. The data landed in agricultural journals, not just as a curiosity, but as a practical tool. For the first time, the science of plant acoustics was stepping out of the lab and into the world's food supply. The question was no longer if it worked, but why it had not been adopted everywhere. In 1973, a Colorado researcher named Dorothy Retalak published data that should have changed everything. Her plants thrived with Bach and wilted with hard rock. Classical music meant strong roots and lush leaves. Led Zeppelin, on the other hand, left them stunted or dead. She logged the numbers, showed the charts, and sent her findings to scientific journals. The response was swift and merciless. Headlines mocked her. Television hosts turned her work into a punchline. The word pseudoscience stuck fast. Grants dried up. Colleagues distanced themselves. One researcher summed up the climate. It's murder when I apply for grants. The field did not just lose funding, it lost its future. Universities stopped teaching plant acoustics. Research proposals vanished from review boards. The ridicule was not just academic, it was economic. At the exact moment Retalak's data was dismissed, the global fertilizer market was exploding. After World War II, chemical fertilizer use had already grown sixfold. By the 1970s, the industry was worth billions. Today, it is $200 billion, propped up by $50 billion a year in government subsidies. That is a system built on products you have to buy again and again. Sound, by contrast, needs only a speaker, no patents, no recurring sales, no supply chain. There is no way to build a billion-dollar empire on something that costs nothing. The message was clear. Free solutions are unwelcome in a market that profits from dependency. Plant acoustics was not just ignored, it was actively erased. For 50 years, anyone who tried to revive the research ran into the same wall. Laughter, lost funding, and a closed door. The numbers were real, but the economics were impossible. That silence was not just in the garden. It echoed through every lab that dared to listen. Sonic bloom was never just a theory. It was a working system, tested in real fields and greenhouses, and still used by growers who want results without chemicals. The core principle is simple. Play the right sound at the right time, then feed the plant while its defenses are down. Carlson's protocol calls for frequencies between 3,000 and 5,000 Hz, matching the dawn chorus of birds. This range forces the stomata, the tiny mouths on every leaf, to open wider than normal. When that window is open, a foliar spray delivers nutrients with up to 700% greater efficiency. The numbers are not just marketing. Electron micrographs from Carlson's lab show stomata stretched wide, nutrient uptake spiking, and growth rates that outpace anything seen in silent controls. The recipe is within reach of anyone with a smartphone. Set a speaker to play between 3,000 and 5,000 Hz for 1 to 3 hours, ideally before 10 a.m., when dew is still present and the plant's natural rhythms are primed for intake. Keep the volume at 70 to 80 decibels, the level of a normal conversation. Place the speaker no more than 10 feet from the plants. More is not better. Playing sound for longer than 3 hours or above 80 decibels can stress or even kill the plant. The science is clear. 8 hours of continuous sound leads to cell damage and collapse. Precision matters. Carlson's method is not the only one that survived the decades of silence. In the hills of Tuscany, Il Paradiso di Frasina vineyard has played Mozart to its grapevines around the clock. The owner reports bigger grapes, no pests, and no pesticides. Bose even donated the sound system after seeing the results. While the vineyard's data is anecdotal, the transformation is visible from row to row. The lesson is universal. Sound, when used with care and timing, can replace a cabinet full of chemicals. The tools are already in your pocket. The only secret left is to begin. Today, $200 billion flows into fertilizers, while plants respond to sound for free. That response was validated by Cell in 2023. As food costs and soil damage rise, ignoring plant acoustics keeps us trapped in an expensive cycle. The science is public, the method is simple, and the silence is now a choice. Sometimes the answer doesn't need invention, it only needs the courage to listen. Drop your thoughts below and let the discussion grow.